Hello and welcome to the top 10 most likely unseen issues for the November 2017 Management Case Study on office furniture manufacturer ZX. So before we start, I'm just going to go through a bit of an introduction to this particular video and where I've got the information on and what you need to do with said information. So how have I come up with these top 10? Well, first of all, you look at the focus in the pre-scene. If there's a lot of material in the pre-scene on a certain topic, then it's likely that there is some kind of importance of that topic. It's likely to be brought up in the exam, so there's more to talk about. And that feeds into the second point here, the degree of importance attached to it by the examiner. But that particular section extends beyond purely what's in the pre-scene, but also what CIMA like to examine. For example, ethics. It may be that there's no real mention of ethics in the case study, but ethics is considered very important by CIMA, and therefore they are likely to examine it. Next is the strategic importance. How important is it to the organization? If a certain topic is very important to the company, for example, say their suppliers. If they rely very heavily on a certain supplier, then it's likely that there might be an issue on the supplier. If something were to happen to that supplier, what impact could that have on the business? And also, just a more general experience in doing these videos in creating mock exams and reviewing exams in the past, the typical kind of issues that come up, and what kind of things have the examiner brought up in the past. And my final point here is about how easy it is to write issues on that subject. The people who write the exams are obviously people too, and they will go for ones that they know, that they can write good questions on. So what do you need to do for these issues? Well, first of all, it's important to prepare key models. So this will be things like your SWOT exam, like SWOT analysis, like your PESTLE analysis. Because building up this information now will help you to adapt the new information given you in the unseen, or help you to have that context to apply the unseen material. Next thing you need to do is practice exam questions on these issues. This will help you to understand the kind of questions that will be asked around these topics and how to answer them. And also, this next section here, it will help you to plan these answers in your mind so that when you go into the exam and you start writing, you'll already have a background in which to apply this new information. You'll already have certain points to bring up in your head as you're writing for them. And I've also put some more generic things here, such as the advantages and disadvantages of these certain topics, where they would be used and how models can be used to support them. So let's move on to the top 10 issues now. So let's start with issue number 10, and issue number 10 for this particular series is risk management. Now, why have I gone for risk management? Well, it's a key P2 topic, and it's become even more important at management level under the new syllabus than under the old one, because it's now considered to be a gateway topic to a lot of the risk topics that you will cover at P3, where risk is the significant factor of that paper, the main factor of that paper. And so it could involve identifying risks, perhaps with the business as a whole. We know there's some issues with cash management, for example, and that may affect their long-term sustainability. We know there are risks with the timber market at the moment. We know there are risks of competitors, etc. May involve discussing the various management technique models, such as the CIMA risk management cycle or the TARA model. That's the transfer, avoid, reduce, accept model. Risk mapping, so judging risks by both the likelihood of them occurring and also the impact they would have on your business, and to take appropriate controls, which in turn are also important, particularly given that article we saw at the back of the pre-scene where the internal controls and were not sufficient enough, and as a result the board were unable to stop the managers at the organisation from taking bribes. So there's a lot of things that we could discuss about risk, a lot of areas in which the examiner could test you on risk, and they do, because it's a very recently and very regularly examined topic. Most CIMA management case study sittings, 1 or 2 variants will have some sort of risk management question. That's unlikely that it would necessarily come across as one entire question just on risk as such, but it's a useful add-on topic to gain some of your extra people marks. For example, if you were given a specific project to analyse whether it is something that the company should be doing, whether it's worthwhile the company doing, you need to analyse the risk in that. Even if you're not specifically asked, as finance managers, the role that we are playing in the management case study exam, we need to be thinking about various risks, such as, does it tie with our strategy? What kinds of things could go wrong in the future? If it perhaps is a design for a new kind of desk or a new kind of table, what if in the future the need for desks and tables has dramatically decreased and we spent hundreds of millions of dollars launching this new project, launching this new product? May also be more focused to the organisation as a whole. So in addition to a project, as mentioned above, may also be for the general risks mentioned in the preceding, such as cash management, such as falling margins, such as increasing costs, and so on. And also, how might they go about managing them, such as the various models involved, as I've already discussed. Also the importance of installing it at a cultural level, and which is what the company does try to do. At least there's evidence in the pre-scene of trying to ensure that all employees follow all rules and regulations, and making sure that they themselves take the responsibility to report anyone who is not following the rules and regulations. So they're making risk management, identifying risk, reporting risk part of the organisation. And also the role of an audit committee or a risk management committee to oversee and control risk. Now, it's unlikely that they'll have a full audit committee, given that they are a private entity and they do not have any non-executive directors, but something to that equivalent, to that effect, could be brought in as a way of helping manage the risks from an overall level. So what kinds of points do we need to raise when talking about risk management in our exam? Well, of course, we know it is an incredibly competitive market that is driving up costs and also pushing down margins. We also have to think about changes to consumer trends, perhaps the growth of the home office, so to speak, and perhaps our strategy is falling behind in that we are only providing office furniture when we need to perhaps be looking to branch out into those various other markets, such as the contract market and particularly the domestic market. And a lack of development, lack of new products, lack of innovation could also be the main cause of that. We are still producing purely for the office market. Perhaps we need to look at the various types of designs, the various kind of needs of the domestic consumer, and what sort of products they need for that. And legal issues as well. Legal issues are always a problem. Breaches in health and safety, breaches in emission standards, etc. There's nothing to suggest that at the moment we are doing any of that, because we know that the company is quite a socially responsible organisation. But those laws may change, or it could be found out that we weren't as green as we thought we were, and we end up having to explain why we have breached some sort of legal regulation. Also talk about the importance of risk being embedded at a cultural level, which of course is what we want to achieve. It's the ultimate goal of installing risk management across the organisation. The importance of risk management to us at management level as finance managers as well, ensuring that the staff at the operational level are going about their jobs effectively and not creating any unnecessary risks. And also, how do we control risks? So when you are presented with an issue that has happened, perhaps explain a control that will help us manage it in the future. For example, perhaps some raw material has gone missing from the storeroom. So perhaps installing CCTV or installing a system, a checklist system where everyone has to sign in and out whenever they go into the storeroom and there's no way of entering the storeroom without it, will help reduce theft. There's of course the key theories that you can use here, ones I've already mentioned. So the TARA model: transfer, accept, reduce or avoid. Fairly self-explanatory. Transfer is when you transfer the risk of something to a third party. This would be like using insurance or using an outsourced provider for something, because then if you suffer a loss as a result, you can claim back from them. Accept is where you just accept that that is part of operating in this particular area, and you just accept that risks is part of that. Reduce is where you take steps to mitigate it, and avoid is where you think the risks are simply too high and you're just going to avoid risks altogether by not doing that particular thing, not going into that market, not producing that product. Risk mapping, so registering the impact and the likelihood, usually 1 to 5. So if something gives a 5 for both impact and likelihood, it's incredibly important that you deal with it as best as you can. If it's a 1 and a 1 in each, then it's unlikely to trouble you, and therefore it's not perhaps worth your time investing in a solution. And also, an audit committee or something to the effect of an audit committee could help install risk management throughout the organization, embed risk management and risk methodology across the organization. So on to my next issue now, and this is ethics and corporate social responsibility. Now, I'm sure that you are not surprised to see ethics and corporate social responsibility here. It was mentioned throughout the pre-scene. The company itself spoke about how it wishes to be seen as an ethical and socially responsible organization with specific focus on health and safety, environmental issues, and also timber ownership in that section on the chain of custody, and how it was hinting that that was going to become a more and more important, more and more crucial thing for the industry as time passed. More and more buyers were only interested in purchasing from manufacturers that could prove this or could provide this certificate of ownership regarding timber. So, apart from the fact that it was mentioned throughout the pre-scene a lot, apart from the fact that it was mentioned as something that's important to the business and also to the industry, given the use of materials like timber, there's also the more nominal fact that it is just an incredibly common topic in the management case study. Of course, there are 21 people marks now in the management exam, a lot more than in your operational level exam. And over the last several sittings, and there have been 11 sittings of the management case study now since the new format was released, and across the 5 variants there has been at least one ethical question per sitting. So that means at least 20% of you will get, well, based on that odds, at least 20% of you will get an ethical question. And one of the reasons why CIMA test it a lot is because it's one of their big important topics. It's one of the topics that they mentioned when the new syllabus was released was going to be very important. If you look at the amount of ethical theory, amount of ethical material in the syllabus for the 2015 syllabus compared to the 2010 syllabus, it's a huge step up. They want to be seen to be testing people on ethics, and therefore ethics is highly likely to come up in every exam that you do. And so likely issues to come up, a few of these we've already discussed, such as timber and emissions as well, but also welfare of the customers. We have an obligation to meet health and safety requirements. We have an obligation to act with integrity with all our stakeholders, with all in all our operations as well. We know that excellence in customer service is incredibly important to us, and so it works from both an ethical and a strategy point of view to be as upfront and honest with our customers as possible. Also suppliers as well. We know from the pre-scene that we use a lot of smaller local suppliers, and that's all about reducing our emissions, reducing the impact of our operations on the environment, which is admirable. But when you use small suppliers, particularly if you are a large company, there can be a tendency for you to throw your weight around a bit, which of course is not considered ethical behavior really. Obviously you have perhaps some power, but you don't want to abuse that power, you don't want to exploit that power, you don't want to be affecting your suppliers negatively, making them sell you materials at such a low price that they're barely making a living, because of course that works for no one in the end, because if they have to go out of business, where will you be? So ethics is all about working well with all stakeholders. It's not just about doing what is ethically right with regards to specific things such as safety and emissions. It's also all about treating all your stakeholders fairly. So other common issues that have arisen in the past, and these are ones that can take place without specific mention in the pre-scene as well, so they're just as likely to come up perhaps as some of the ones that we've discussed that were relevant to the pre-scene. Things like bribery. We know that there was no mention of bribery with regards to ZX, but of course ARM has suffered as a result of bribery. Bribery is never acceptable from an ethical perspective, so don't even try and argue it in any way, shape or form. Treatment of staff and treatment of suppliers. Again, this can come up in many shapes, many forms. There was no hint that we were perhaps mistreating our staff or suppliers, but that doesn't mean that we won't be given information in the unseen that proves us wrong. It's also worth noting that when you get the unseen information, if there's any information that contradicts the material in the pre-scene, go with the unseen information, not with the pre-scene material, because the unseen material is what you are being tested on there and then on exam day. Pollution is also a big ethical issue, which of course would be a big ethical no-no for us as well, because we are a company that cares about its impact on the environment, a company that has taken steps to reduce its impact on the environment and improve its waste management. Governance of the organisation as well. This is not referring to the code of governance as such, but it's referring to just the general running of the organisation, particularly with regards to confidentiality and integrity and professional competence and due care. If the company, the board of directors of the organisation is not running the company in the best interests of stakeholders, that is also an ethical issue. So key points to bring up here is that CIMA want you to be highly ethical. I've spoken already about how important CIMA consider ethics. They want you to take the moral high ground whenever possible. In short, there's no such thing as being too ethical. If there's any grey area at all, go with it's not ethical. Don't sit on the fence with regards to ethical issues. Take a stand, and if it doesn't look completely okay, doesn't look completely right, completely ethical, it's not ethical. Because of course, ethics is just the right thing to do, and if you put that phrase in as well, that will definitely satisfy the examiner. And also what I recommend when talking about ethics and corporate social responsibility is always make a recommendation, even if you're not asked for one. If you're asked for one, make a long one. If you're not asked, at least put a short one in just as a sort of conclusion, and mention both the short and the long term. And what I mean by this is how you deal with a particular issue here and now, and also how do you stop it from happening again in the future. And this of course ties back with issue number 10, ties back with risk management by putting new controls in place. And so the example I've given here is an accident. Perhaps someone on the production line has trapped their thumb or their hand in one of the machines and it's caused them damage, they've had to be signed off of work, etc. So in the short term, we can change the safety procedure so that it doesn't happen again immediately. And then in the long term, we can invest more in training, we can invest more in equipment to ensure that we don't need to worry about something like this happening again, because we have trained our staff to be aware of it. We have provided them with an environment where this can no longer happen. And so the key theories to use when talking about ethics, obviously the CIMA ethical principles: integrity, confidentiality, professional behaviour, objectivity, professional competence, and due care. Usually any kind of ethical issue will fall into one of these categories. So when you are answering your question on ethics, please think about which one this falls into and bring it up, and bring up why it's important, because as I said, CIMA want to be testing it, and they're certainly going to appreciate it if you use their own model to evaluate it. Another one as well, the American Accounting Association resolution model. Now this is quite a larger model, but you don't need to learn all the different parts of it, but just think of the key headings here. So we've got duty of care, end consequences, values, and norms. So duty of care: who do we owe a duty of care to? We owe a duty of care to our stakeholders. What is the end result of this particular issue, and why is that negative? Why does that negatively affect our shareholders? What values are present, values that we should be upholding, and also relating them back to cultural norms within the organisation, and also the different laws in Cordia as such. And of course, throw in this phrase: it's simply the right thing to do, because that's always a nice phrase to just pepper in there that will help illustrate that you are thinking ethically. You are not just thinking ethically because you've been told you have to think ethically, because you genuinely, more at your core, so to speak, feel that way. So I hope you've enjoyed this sample video, and more importantly found it useful. Before I go, I'd like to quickly tell you about a few of the products that we do here at Astranti Financial Training, specifically for our case study courses. We have a study text which details all the key theories in which you will be expected to use in your case study exam, as well as details of how to approach the pre-scene and the case study. We also have a series of course videos detailing how to answer case study questions. This is actually an area in which many students struggle. Most of the scripts that I've seen, the failing scripts that I've seen, has actually been due to poor case study technique rather than lack of knowledge. We also have a series of pre-scene analysis videos based on the current up-to-date pre-scene, detailing all the key bits of information and likely issues you may face in the exam. Next up is the industry analysis, a pack detailing information about the industry that the pre-scene company resides in, information about the key players within that industry, and more background information on the industry in general. We also have a range of mock exams created for each level and based on the current pre-scene, which is a great way to get some practice in before you sit the real thing. We also offer marking and feedback on those mock exams, so you can see where you are going wrong and where you can improve. Finally, we have the master classes. These are 2 one-day classes taken by our expert tutors to give you all the hints and tips you need to really add to your chances of passing the exam. Also, if you take our full course, we offer a pass guarantee, which, provided you have met all the requirements of the pass guarantee, you will get a free resit on the next exam should you fail to pass. So once again, thank you for your time. If you're interested in any of these products, please visit the website www.astranti.com for more information. Thank you.